The deliverables are going to be a series of possible pathways that are most likely and ideally going to be in two different categories, one being operational items and the other that addresses corporate culture. Those are things that this board and this sheriff and the future sheriff will be able to use to look at and implement short-term and long-term perspectives and possible solutions. Our current estimated timeline for delivery of that would be the end of August, so before Labor Day. Who are we going to approach to conduct this study? In conversations with the chairman and the vice chairman, we're going to reach out to some noted experts that we have here locally within the Foster College of Business and solicit proposals from some of those individuals that are well known in our community. They have different approaches, so this isn't necessarily an approach where we're looking for them to collaborate, but we'll ask them for their approach and how they might pursue this from a process standpoint and evaluate those and pick the best one for what we're looking for. Because this is COVID related, it's my evaluation of the situation that this type of purchase does fall under the emergency declaration that you will ideally renew on the county board agenda later tonight. One of the action items in that proclamation is the suspension of purchasing rules. Right now, I don't have an exact estimate on how much it will cost, but I can't believe it would be much more than what my spending authority is anyway. And then once we have those proposals back, I'll talk to the chairman and the vice chairman and identify just exactly how we want to evaluate those and which one we're going to select, and then we'll move ahead. Too early, obviously, to tell exactly how they're going to go about collecting their data, how they're going to go about preparing the assessment and what the recommendations might be for those pathway forwards. We're really going to leave it up to them to tell us how they might want to approach this project. Mr. Chairman, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll open it up to the floor. Member Groves Allison.
Can you go into a little more detail about what the goal specifically would be from the strategic assessment? I'm asking, are we trying to verify whether the problems that have been brought forward are in fact problems, or are you looking for solutions?
From my perspective, I think we're going to be focused more on solutions. This body is not going to solve many of the national issues that we are experiencing, but we've got to find local solutions to address those challenges to the best of our ability.
I would also add to that, I don't think we have a full and complete understanding of what the challenges are. I think we have some windows into it, but we don't have a comprehensive look. That's why I wanted to go outside and have somebody with credentials in research do the work on behalf of our elected officials. We're being asked generally to fund or not fund as a matter of routine for, it's our business planning each year. And I'm pretty sure, as much as I've learned through the years about how our law enforcement piece works here, that I only know a small fraction of it. So that's what we're trying to do, is to collect enough information to satisfy our appetite so that we have a better understanding of what the challenges are, and not just the ones, and not play whack-a-mole with it, quite frankly, where a problem pops up and we try to do something to fix it, make it better, or in some cases worse. Dr. Blair.
I totally understand the whack-a-mole theory being rough, trying to guess what might work, but since this won't really be done until August, do we have any kind of temporary measures we might be considering between those times?
So in the short term, I know the sheriff has taken some aggressive stances from a compensation standpoint, offering increased compensation for voluntary overtime. Just yesterday, he put a new social media post out in terms of new and increased signing bonuses for new hires. And that varies whether or not you're a lateral transfer from another agency or coming into law enforcement for the very first time. Those are just two of the examples that we're looking at. I know the sheriff is looking at other means of trying to find solutions. Obviously we're going to have to, I think, more than redouble our already aggressive recruitment efforts. Recruitment, though, is not the current recruitment challenges are not unique to us. But we have to redouble those efforts and put out all the effort we can into actively recruiting, so that because the real solution is filling the 15% vacancy rate, so that those that are working right now can get some of that relief.
Dr. Blair, I would just add that we have several committee chairpersons in this room today. They may or may not be undertaking various investigations or queries of their own. What I'm trying to do is put together a more comprehensive lesson plan for the body in hopes of helping those committee chairs. But we're in a bad situation, and I think I just know from my day job we don't have applications coming in. It's unheard of, and the sheriff has described a very similar situation. Or those applications that he gets are not the kinds of folks that we want to make one of our team members for Peoria County. So this is a multifaceted, multi-level problem.
Yeah, I fully support a strategic assessment to really get an understanding of the big picture. I just want to make sure that that doesn't stop us from trying some stuff.
Sure.
Before that's done.
Mr. Renaud.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm assuming even though the September deadline is kind of the final report, I'm assuming we'll be checking in with these consultants, and if they come up with something that we can do short term, that they would bring that to us prior to that September deadline. Is that correct?
I think you want to make sure you don't rush the cooks in the kitchen. September is really not that far away by the time you get this started. Originally, we had looked at a July 1st, just because it's the end of 6 months. Not knowing what's in the book of business for the consultants that we're thinking about right now and how quickly they can get to the conversation, I think we said Labor Day, and Labor Day was key only for one reason, is that we would have time to fund certain initiatives if necessary. So if you'd like us to move that up and try to get a June 30th report back by, I'm sure Scott's capable of trying to seek that objective too.
My concern is that if they come up with something that we could use in the short term, but don't report it until September, like let's say they come up with something in July, that it's something that we could implement to help. I understand everything that the sheriff is doing to help with compensation, but I think that is just one component of it. I think the longer we wait, the more compounded the fatigue is going to be. It's having an effect on our employees' mental health. It's having an effect on their home lives. And I think that's a component that we can't ignore. I don't know if the consultants will come up with a solution, but if they happen to come up with something prior to September that maybe we could implement to help relieve the fatigue, and not necessarily the compensation part, like I said, that I think if they could report whatever epiphany they have to us before that, that would be great.
Thank you. Mr. Rosenbaum.
Are we hiring one or two consultants?
Should
I
be
talked to
one.
you-
It's one.
Okay, so who's going to pick the consultant? What group? Is the sheriff going to be in on this to kind of lead, guide us on?
I
what the
think he's a
problems are?
participant. I think we're going to act as a body. The county board is going to investigate this. That's why Scott will select a vendor for us. We certainly can impose ourselves on Scott there if we like. I think he's quite capable of getting an expert in research from the university without our help. So that's my answer to that question. And we're making sure to include all the officials, not just the sheriff's department, because the relationships are more than obvious to those of us sitting here. Anyone else? Mr. Ricker.
I think it's just early trying to think through a lot of great questions already asked by fellow board members, so thank you for that. First thought that comes to my mind is that obviously this majority of the issues we are facing here in Peoria County are bigger than Peoria County, meaning throughout the state of Illinois. We've heard statistics of other sheriff's departments having the same issue, so it's not unique to us. Not sure how we can leverage resources to understand that on a broader scale than just trying to draw lines around our county and saying, well, we're just selfishly looking. And I assume the consultants will look bigger than that, but you know, I'm not sure how to address that issue or that scale, because if we do this in isolation, I think we're probably missing some of the value. So that's the first. I think I'm hearing Dr. Blair, I've heard Rob and others talk about we need to probably, in concert with this study, take some actions appropriately to try to stem the tide to address the short-term issues. I don't know if we have a good plan. I know there was, you know, last week or so there was some of the concerns of the employees currently employed or people looking concerned about qualified immunity. I've done a lot of homework and study trying to learn on that, but right or wrong, if it's a concern and it's causing the culture of our employees or future employees to not come here, we need to at least take some approach to calm their fears, calm their nerves, try to address it. I'm not going to throw out a solution here because I don't have a good one yet. But again, that's one of them that's sitting out there, I think, on the table that maybe we could easily try to address to at least let our current employees know that that, you know, that issue hopefully is not something that's going to impact their career. I'll leave it as that. But I think there's some short-term things we definitely need to take advantage of, as my fellow board members also have highlighted.
Well, I'm just trying to make sure that there are a lot of voices on this subject, that we don't put ourselves in a situation of ready, fire, aim. Okay? And when you mess with compensation in one section of the house, you have to address equity in all sections of the house. So to the extent that compensation is some sort of job satisfaction quotient, which most studies probably say that's not the number one thing in culture, I think you're just in a whack-a-mole situation. But there are a lot of different opinions on this, and I would just politely say that the meeting that Jim and I had with the sheriff on Monday was a very uncomfortable meeting. And it's clear to me, and I think, Jim, I'll let him speak for himself, that there are no simple solutions here. Whatever is currently in the mix can get voted on, can get moved through committee, can get sent to budget to see if they want to fund it. We do all that stuff, but we're doing it in the dark. And your point about this is probably not a localized situation. I am simply trying to get this body as much information in a format that they can digest to make good decisions. And I believe, as your chairman, that I want to be the voice of saying, let's do this first before we start tinkering with too many parts, because we're not even thinking through the unintended consequences of some of this stuff. So I'm looking a little bit more long view. I'd like some of the data to come in real short term, And then we'll act as we normally do with our processes.
Okay.
Back to you, where we started. And thanks for the question, Steve.
Is the sheriff here, or are we aware of whether his office is supportive of this approach?
His office was not unsupportive of this approach. When Jim and I left, we laid out exactly what we were going to talk about doing. I see the captain is raising his hand, so. Sure, if you'd like. I don't know that we can say you speak for the sheriff, so I want to make sure we say that.
Can you hear me? As the chairman had mentioned, I'm not going to speak directly for the sheriff, but some of the comments that were made I think are important to note as far as things that are happening immediate. As of Tuesday, Illinois Department of Corrections again halted or suspended transfer of their inmates. That is significant to us. If there's anything the board can do in reference to those issues, and I know this is a bigger issue, this is a Illinois issue, but when they don't take their inmates, that care in custody falls on us. They're technically IDOC inmates. And they've controlled this narrative all along. So the more inmates that we have in the facility with the less staff, it just creates a bigger burden and a longer time to get the tasks accomplished. So that's one huge issue. If it could ever get corrected, that would provide some type of help in regards to the care and the custody, because that directly deals with the population. Now, the flip side to that is when they go to compensate us for this time that we've done this, that's at about 30 cents on the dollar. That's a whole nother issue, but you know how that is. It's on the issue of fairness. We know we talked about wages and benefits. I'm not going to go into depth of that, but the reality of it is in the job market, retention is the key. We can't keep losing people, especially if we can't keep bringing people in. I don't know what the direct answer is, but to be able to eliminate the objective of to say, well, I can go over here and get this package that's available to me, wage and compensation and benefits versus what I have, there's something to that. There is something to it, whether it's motivation, not motivation. And let's look at the conditions that they work in. There's not many jobs that you go to where you get urine and feces thrown at you. It happens, okay? So those conditions are different as well. The other thing that would be helpful is any support you can offer to the facilities team. There are issues in the jail that need to be corrected and fixed because those are areas and conditions for which they work. That has a bearing too. And then Steve mentioned, obviously, the discussion of qualified immunity down the road. So I agree. I think that needs to be discussed as well because I think it has a bearing in the big picture of things. So I do appreciate what you guys are doing as a committee and as a board, especially even the long-term aspects of it. And I appreciate you giving me a chance to speak, at least so I can put onto the table what are some of the things that are pressing and are happening right now. So I just want to thank you. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you.
Mr. Rosenbaum, then Ms. Relaford, then was it Mr. Renault? Mr. Rosenbaum.
I'm going to ask if you guys could make a list of things that you would like us to do. Who would like, you guys knew who to contact with the Department of Corrections that aren't doing that. I don't know if it'll do any good, but if all at once all the board members start sending letters personally or as a board, as a whole, saying, this is unacceptable. They need to do, and I know they're having the same problems that we are, but you can't pass your problems on to somebody else all the time. And if there's stuff where you can see where we can help, just stuff, I'm not sure what it is, but anything that, maybe it's a short list, maybe it's a long list, but stuff that we know and where maybe have here's what we'd like you see to do in a short paragraph underneath explaining it so we understand it. Maybe that's a good idea, maybe it's not. It's just something I'm throwing up in the air to see if it sticks on the wall.
Brian Elsesser.
Joined.
We're certainly willing to do that. I just think that collectively you as a board maybe want to discuss these topics collectively to see what avenue you guys want to, or how to manage that collectively first. I just put that out there. Okay.
Ms. Relaford?
Thank you for the information. I know that we as a board, I think it came up in our last set of committee meetings. I know the comments have been made by my fellow board members. A lot of it is centered around the fact of, again, thinking back to things at the state level, not just the local level and the implications of that. Is there been any further thought? I don't know if there's a yes or no answer to this. Again, this is more of a policy related question than necessarily day to day about us, again, approaching those collectively that are in our statewide offices.
Thank you. Thank you, Cap. All right, it's 5:30. I think we have another committee that needs to meet. Has everybody had their piece? I want to thank Scott and Jim for the meeting on Monday. Just to be frank, it was a difficult meeting, but it certainly left me with the impression that not only is the sheriff supportive of what we've talked about doing here, but and I can hear the critics already. It's just be one more damn study going to sit on the shelf somewhere. I just don't think we know how big this problem is and how multi-layered and multifaceted it is. It is so, this one example of IDOC not taking their inmates after we've had them for however long we've had them to get them justice, is huge in the backlog and the need for person power down there at the jail. The $35 a day that we're getting per head is under the cost we charge, I think, the federales of $105 a day per prisoner. So it's multi-layered, but my sense is that the sheriff is pleased that he's gotten our attention, I just know that there's a whole bunch of detail on this that would benefit everybody in this room. We're not going to change the world, but we will be able to at least do our level best with blinders off for the people who we value, these three elected officials, the chief judge, state's attorney, and the sheriff. And I think that's a good thing to do. So, Tim, were you okay with where we're here? You want to?
Absolutely. Put it up very well.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting, and the one that follows is whose committee? Land use. Oh, I will surrender my warm chair to Mr. Dillon. And then I heard Brian just dial in. Jimmy, I don't know if he's trying to get into your meeting or not.